Good morning, everyone. This morning's talk is on the Bahiya Sutta, where the Buddha teaches Bahiya mindfulness in a very succinct and direct way. And I think it's a nice 7 weeks on the Satipatthana Sutta, the four foundations of mindfulness. The Buddha kind of coalesced that whole long sutta into this brief teaching to Bahiya, and it works. We'll meditate for 30 minutes first, so find your relaxed meditative posture. And gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And holding your back straight, but not stiff. Ears aligned with your shoulders, nose aligned with your navel. And holding yourself very loosely, very gently, very lovingly. Allow yourselves to settle into this room. Seats. Settle into your bodies. And settle into your minds. Take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. Just get a feel for what that's like. To be mindful of your breath in your body. And while remaining mindful of your breath in your body, notice that thoughts are flowing. We're conscious beings, thoughts should be flowing. The purpose of meditation is to not be distracted by your own thoughts. So when you find that you're caught up in your thinking again, simply acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. Relaxing your thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. And we'll meditate for 30 minutes with callbacks every 5 minutes. relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. relaxing thoughts, of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Persistent thought or feeling arises. Stay with it for a moment or two. Recognize it as impermanent and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. Meditate for 5 more minutes. Take a moment to notice the quality of your mind. Be at peace with your mind. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Tuesday. Say hello to Anita, please. Weeks, I've been talking about and explaining the Satipatthana Sutta. In that sutta, the Buddha teaches the proper application of mindfulness as mindfulness relates to meditation, and then to some key of the Dhamma, the 5 hindrances, the 5 clinging aggregates, the 6 sense base, the 7 factors of awakening, and then finally being mindful of the 4 noble truths. So the Buddha taught a very specific and well-focused mindfulness on the Dhamma. He avoided using applications of mindfulness that could be seen as contemplation or an analytical way of looking at objects, events, views, and ideas, and simply to hold in mind the framework of the Eightfold Path as our path to awakening, and to do that in a very dispassionate way. What that type of mindfulness develops in us is a dispassionate mindfulness of ourselves in relationship to the world as our life is unfolding. And to do that in a dispassionate way, which is really the essence of the Dhamma, to remove ourselves from the equation and simply live our life as our life unfolds. And so with Bahiya, obviously someone who's been developing the Dhamma, he has a rather complete understanding of the Buddha's teaching, but he's missing a key point, and it's at that point of eye-making that Bahiya is missing it. And the Buddha gets right to the point. Bahiya is also very impatient about developing awakening. He's got an idea of impermanence, and that his days or minutes on this planet are numbered, or at least potentially numbered, and so are the Buddhas. So let's get to it. But Bahiya was revered in his community as a person of great understanding. One day in seclusion, Bahiya entertained the idea of whether he was an arahant, an enlightened being, or was he lacking in some key understanding? And I guess you could say that if he's questioning that, he's probably lacking in it. In meditation, a female diva, a diva is a disincarnate being, usually portrayed as someone who has great knowledge, but not necessarily. A diva could be, in the metaphorical sense, could be just as confused and deluded as any other being. Diva told him that he was not yet an arahant. In fact, his current practice did not have the qualities that could give rise to awakening. The metaphorical uses of disincarnate beings, the diva is metaphor for the Bahiya's own ongoing consciousness. Mara, the malevolent god, Mara is often portrayed and used as metaphor throughout the Pali Canon to describe a confused and deluded. And that was very common during the Buddhist time. It relates a lot to the Vedas, the precursor to modern Hinduism, which used obviously metaphor in most of all of its doctrines. The Buddha asked the diva, or insight arose within him, if there was one in the world who knew the way to awakening. He told Bahiya of an arahant, a rightly self-awakened one, who teaches his Dhamma. He was in Savatthi at the time. Bahiya immediately left to find the Buddha and learn the Dhamma. He came upon a group of monks and asked if they knew where to find the Buddha. The monks told Bahiya that the Buddha was on his alms round. Bahiya went into town and came upon the Buddha. Bahiya feared impermanence and uncertainty and was concerned that he or the Buddha may die before he received the Dhamma. The Buddha was serene and at peace. He placed himself at the Buddha's feet and asked, Teach me the Dhamma, awakened one. Teach me the Dhamma for my long-term welfare and lasting happiness. The Buddha replied, this is not the time, Bahiya. I am on my alms round. Pleaded, awaken one. No one can know for sure the dangers there may be for you or for me. Teach me the Dhamma for my long-term welfare and lasting happiness. A second time, the Buddha responded, this is not the time, Bahiya. I am on my alms round. Again, Bahiya pleaded, awaken one. No one can know for sure the dangers there may be for you or for me. Teach me the Dhamma for my long-term welfare and lasting happiness. So Bahiya certainly had an understanding of impermanence, didn't he? Finally, the Buddha relented. I will teach you the Dhamma, Bahiya. Listen carefully to my words. Train yourself in this manner. What is seen, there is only the seen. In what is heard, there is only the heard. In what is sensed, there is only the sense. In what is cognized, there is only the cognized. You could say that's the essence of the Dhamma in that one brief teaching. This is how you should train yourself. For you, there is only, when for you there is in what is seen, only the seen. In what is heard, only the heard. In what is sensed, only the sense. And in what is cognized, only the cognized. Then, Bahiya, there is no you in connection with what is seen, heard, sensed, or cognized. There is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here, nor there, nor anywhere in between. This and only this is the end of stress and unhappiness. So the Buddha is describing a way of living in the world, incorporating a self-referential ego personality into the world. Whatever is occurring, if it's a sound, it's only a sound. It's not a sound that I like or a sound that I dislike. And what is heard, there's only what is heard. It's not something that I find pleasant or something that I find that I have aversion to. It's simply what's occurring. In what is cognized and what is thought, this is really an interesting line for me, and I think it should be for all of us. It's only what I'm thinking. My thinking doesn't have to be any different than it is, but if I can use the framework of the Eightfold Path to recognize what I should think and when it's appropriate to think that, then my thinking will always be inclined towards awakening. But whatever is thought is what is thought. And then the Buddha goes on to say, when this is accomplished, there is no you there. Of course, the Buddha is not saying to Bahiya that he will be annihilated, that poof, he'll be gone. He's simply describing, this is why it has to be taken into context, he's simply describing that the initial cause of suffering rooted in ignorance is no longer present. It can do this and look at the world in this dispassionate, mindful way. He will have emptied himself of ignorance through his own direct efforts. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. He's gaining right view by removing a wrong view rooted in ignorance arising and feeding an ego self. When for you, there is no you there, and then there is no you here, there, or anywhere. What does the Buddha mean by that? He means that you have overcome the distraction of being stuck in the past or the future or projecting yourself into scenarios that aren't present. Even a scenario that is rising from an immediate distraction. Somebody says something you don't like, and your next thought might be how to come back at that or how to defend yourself, rather than simply recognizing this as this person's point of view and remaining at peace. Mary was talking about that last week in a very eloquent way. Just being present with what's occurring. And then you think about how profound this teaching is. The Buddha certainly understands Bahiya's eagerness to awaken. And he also understands that Bahiya has a certain grasp of impermanence. It's very succinct teaching. For when there is no you there, there is no you here, there, or anywhere. Left for suffering to arise in. Let me continue. The way this concludes is very interesting, and some people find it. You might remember how. Well, we'll see. Upon hearing the words of the Buddha, Bahiya's mind cleared. Clinging and grasping, greed and aversion ended, and all self-referential views were extinguished. Bahiya awakened. My words here. It is by being fully present with dispassionate mindfulness that we are able to truly see our attachments In this brief teaching, the Buddha taught Bahiya to put aside all views of self arising from confused and deluded thoughts based on clinging and craving. To truly understand any problem, the problem must be observed clearly, without discriminating thought and without a view of self attached to what is observed. It's interesting that quantum physicists are now coming up against the problem of what they're observing. It has a direct effect on what is being observed. And the big problem, and I don't want to get into quantum physics or any of that, quantum mechanics, the big problem that they're facing right now is how to remove themselves from the equation, from what they're observing. This is something the Buddha recognized 2,600 years ago. I won't get any deeper now. I talked about that on our retreat, and there's one talk on that. This includes the immediate and mundane problems of the ever-changing physical world and the individual and immediate problem of the distraction of stress and unhappiness. In Dhamma practice, as dispassionate mindfulness develops, the distraction of the physical world and the distraction of our own individual stress and unhappiness is understood as the same distraction. It describes that as being joined with the world. We can't differentiate anymore where our wrong views take us and where we are enveloped in those views. The Buddha described that in his when he described his awakening in the Bahiya Sutta as the feedback loop between self-referential views and conditioned thinking, meaning thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. The ego personality's need for the people and events of the phenomenal world to be different than they appear to be is the distraction of stress. It is a distraction of stress that leads to mindlessness and maintains stress and unhappiness, and the confusion of the ego personality. It is in the very first teaching that the Buddha set the wheel of truth in motion, that he describes the truth of all stress and unhappiness. Now this is the noble truth of stress, disappointment, and unhappiness. Stressful, aging is stressful, death is stressful, sorrow, regret, pain, grief, and despair are stressful, or suffering. Association with the unbeloved is stressful, separation from what is loved is stressful, not getting what is wanted is stressful. In short, the five clinging aggregates are stressful. The five clinging aggregates just describe the personal experience of ongoing suffering, ongoing stress. The Buddha is pointing out in his very first teaching, the first words that he ever spoke, related to suffering in a very simple and direct, and some would say almost too simplistic way, until you realize that it is the preoccupation with stress that continues self-referential views rooted in ignorance. It causes ongoing distraction and ongoing suffering. As a consequence of being born in the world, we are all subject to stress arising from impermanence and clinging. The five clinging aggregates describe the mental physical components of the ego personality in the phenomenal world. This is a noble truth in that it transcends time. It was true at the time of the Buddha, and it is true today. One of the reasons why that is in this article is there's a lot of justification for altering and accommodating the Buddhist teachings, saying that those teachings are archaic and are not relevant to what's occurring in the world today. Of course, they certainly are. The Buddhist descriptions of suffering is exactly the same today as it was then. In describing the noble truth of stress, the Buddha is teaching to see clearly and with dispassion that these experiences are inevitable and are to be understood as impermanent manifestations of non-self, or not self, or the ego personality. Stress arises from the ego personality wanting these and all other experiences to be different than they are. And this is true of even things that we find pleasurable. We want it different because we want more of it. We want it to last forever. We want to hold on to it. We want to join with it. We create identities over that. The ego personality is what has taken form through the five clinging aggregates. By putting aside all views of self, by letting go of the attachment to the ego personality, no views are left to influence the experience of the present moment. And right view then define our experience. Again, there's no me here. This is mindfulness of the Buddha's Dhamma, wholehearted practice of Shamatha-Vipassana meditation within the framework of the Eightfold Path is what the Buddha taught to develop dispassionate mindfulness, free of the ego personality's discriminating and discursive views. That was all part of the good part. Now we're getting to it. Shortly after Bahiya's encounter with the Buddha and his awakening, he was attacked and killed by a cow. point where many people laugh, just because of the irony of it. But that cow is out there for all of us. We have to remember that. The Buddha, upon hearing of Bahiya's death, instructed some monks to retrieve the body, to cremate it properly, and to prepare a memorial to Bahiya. Pleaded the monks, knowing Bahiya's awakening, asked the Buddha what Bahiya's future state would be. The Buddha replied, "Monks, Bahiya was wise. He practiced the Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma." I love this line. "And did not pester me with issues not related to the Dhamma." Saying that 2,600 years ago. He didn't pester me. Meaning that and I think about how this whole thing started, but he got right to the point. Teach me this right now, because there's no time. The Buddha often referred to, we should take to the Dhamma like our hair's on fire. We don't know when the cow's going to come for us, do we?
Or the car.
Or the car, or the bus, or anything else. Bahiya did not pester me with issues not related to the Dhamma. Bahiya monks, say that correctly, is awakened. Where water, earth, fire, and wind have no footing, meaning there's no longer clinging to the world through our physical body, our sixth sense base. Where water, earth, fire, and wind have no footing. There the stars don't shine, the sun isn't visible. There the moon doesn't appear. There darkness is not found. And when a sage, a Brahmin, through great wisdom and discernment, has realized this for himself, I missed the page. Then form and formless, from bliss and pain. When the Buddha is describing bliss and pain, he's describing dukkha. From bliss and pain, he is freed. What does that whole sequence mean? It doesn't mean that for the final moments of Bahiya's life, before the cow got him, there, or that the stars weren't there, the ongoing potential for unpleasant experiences wasn't there. For him, there was no attachment to it. He was simply engaged in the ongoing unfolding of his awakened state. This is another line that gets people confused. In some Buddhist schools, that when you awaken, you vanish into the ether. Of course, just looking at the Buddha's own life, that's not true, isn't it? He awakened and then spent 45 of the most effective and meaningful years any human being ever lived. But there was no him there. He was not attached to things being any different. But he was right to understand the immediacy of needing to awaken through the Dhamma. No one can know when sickness, aging, and death will arise, and this is why the Buddha gave these final instructions moments before he himself passed. Permanence and decay are inevitable. Work diligently for your own salvation. Those are the last thing, or at least the last recorded words of the Buddha. It came after Ananda, who was the Buddha's cousin and his attendant for the last 25 years of the Buddha's life, pleaded with him because he knew that the Buddha was going to pass. I should preface this a little bit. This is in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, which is one of the longest suttas because it encompasses the last 90 days or so of the Buddha's life. Towards the end of that, Ananda knows the Buddha is going to pass. In fact, he said, I'm on my way out. And Ananda pleaded with him for one final teaching. What's going to happen to us when we're gone? Give us your final teaching. And right before this, the Buddha said, I'm not like a teacher with a closed fist. I've held nothing back. I've given you everything you need to awaken. Impermanence and decay are relentless. Strive diligently for your own salvation. Even that last line is so important because it points the practitioner back to realizing that it's up to him to awaken. It's not by grace or favor or favorable karma or anything else, the right teacher. It's through our own efforts that we become awakened. That's the end of today's talk. Thank you. Any questions about the talk? And then we'll go around the room. Anthony, always good to see you.
You too, John. It's great teaching. And I was reminded of my own experience over the last week because I was in a residency for mental health counseling, and we really got very close, spending we were in classes from 8 to 5. And a lot of what we did was counseling each other on our triggers. So we could be prepared to counsel people that we may have values or disagreements with. And so you got to really know where people came from and, what troubles they had in their life, and with them. It was pretty amazing. As I was telling you before, we had a veteran who had PTSD. She was picking what caused her PTSD to counsel someone with that. We had people who were bullied and people who bullied and people who were abused. And we got to know, got to really know everybody as people. When it was over and everybody left, and I was one of the few people who stayed an extra day to be with my brother. And they were probably all, going on planes, and so they had enough to distract them. But I was just sitting there in the room alone, and I felt this deep sadness, almost like when you lose a loved one. I realized I was sort of like clinging onto the class, being together, and so I had to dig deep, and impermanence was very helpful.
Yeah. And
just realizing that this is part of the flow of life. People are going to come and go in my life, and I'm going to be attached to some of them, and then I'm going to lose them. And so it was really difficult for me, I think, because we got so intensely involved in each other for such a long period of time. Yeah. So the teachings were really helpful to me.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That it is, all of that was obviously entirely appropriate for that setting. We got you got some training on the need to take care of yourself too. While you were saying that, for some reason, I was thinking back to
I got to be you one night too. Teacher let me lead.
Oh, that brings up another good point that I hope I remember to get to. About Mother Teresa many years ago. It wasn't an autobiography, but it was. She said that it's authentic. She signed off on it. And one of the things that was remarkable, and it's helped me so much over the years, view of Mother Teresa was that she spent her whole life 24/7 involved with the worst of the worst, meaning not the worst of the worst, the most infirmed in the world. True. And with the big thing that I got out of this really good book was that for 6 hours every day, her and her nuns spent that in seclusion, in prayer and meditation, and taking good care of themselves so that they could go out to the world. And that really, it shows compassion married with true wisdom. You gotta take care of yourself too. And so you had that intense experience for 7 days. And it's hard to disentangle. You didn't have any opportunity to do it either, except when the sessions were over. Yeah. But that's something good for all of us to understand. Every human being, unless you have some organic psychoses, has compassion for other people. The problem we get into is we don't have the wisdom to go along with that compassion. The Buddha described that in his own life as being an unawakened bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is someone who's imbued with great compassion for other beings. But unawakened means that he didn't have the wisdom to go along with that. A lot of hurt done in the world from well-intentioned human beings, but lacking a true wisdom. Nothing's more important for those of us that have encountered the Dhamma, if we really want to show compassion for everyone, is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. That's why you hear me often say the most loving thing I can do for myself and all other sentient beings and awaken. Then we can be truly compassionate. When Anthony told me he was going to start getting into this, I got clinging to it a little bit because I know his compassion and his wisdom. I think he's going to be a great counselor. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Jay, good to see you this morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. And there was a nice talk there. Interesting couple things that I don't quite find it easy to apprehend are the business about self or I. I don't know how I can be other than I am in that way. I'm very much tied up with my identity. It's all I got.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't foresee becoming awakened anytime soon. I guess I want to I'm still involved in taking the good with the bad. And good things, pleasurable things like for the next 10 days, there's a music fest up in Bethlehem. Yeah. And I anticipate going and hearing some very good music. And I'll be peeved if the crowd is noisy and irreverent, which when you go to concert venues these days, is more and more the case. So, yes, I'm looking forward to it. There are things about it I know, I won't enjoy. But in the end, I'll take the hope that it'll be an enjoyable time, and I'll see some good groups and some good music, and not so much that I'll wind up having to listen to modern country and Western music. Some venues are some of the things that really aggravate me. So I don't know what that's got to do with Buddhist teachings, but I make no bones about the fact that I'm a poor candidate for a good outcome as far as awakening, because I'm still all tied up in the material world.
Thank you for that brutal honesty.
What else can I say?
No, you're absolutely, and excuse me. The thing about what the Buddha taught, he never saw himself as a savior. He didn't see his Dhamma as salvific, meaning that everybody must do it. He wasn't on a mission to save everybody. If you find develop it, if you find all of it useful, develop it. What you describe as hoping that, I'm just using this as an example, hoping there's not too much modern country music, is part of J. It's part of I-making, because that modern country music wouldn't be there if there weren't a good number of folks that really enjoyed that too. And so the understanding between the difference of acceptance and approval, we realize that we can be present with something. We might not have to react to it, and we can accept it simply because it's what's occurring. That's where it takes you. But you're also describing the initial difficulty of holding on to views and what they create. And again, we're all free to do that. Most of the people that encountered the Buddha's Dhamma during his time didn't say, "Oh, this is great. I can't wait to develop it fully." And the same is true today. So you take what you can. If you enjoy meditation, that's great. I'm glad you joined us today.
Well, thank you. And I try and pick up bits of wisdom wherever I can. I never shut my mind off to the things. There's an old Grateful Dead song. Once in a while, you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. That's one of the ones that stays in my head.
I'm glad you're here this morning. Diane, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, and thank you for your steadfast teaching, being here.
You're welcome.
Well, I don't. One of the things that has been a problem with me has been loyalty. I remember my father telling me, "You have to date lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of guys, so you can find out what you want." And had this friend since I was 9 years old that I liked, and he told me, Dad told me that I couldn't like him because I didn't know enough other people. And it was like, I'm not blaming my father or anything like that, but it was like he was telling me I didn't know myself and stuff like that, and so I kind of went through life abandoning myself a lot, and I became a chameleon. Whoever I was with, I would be, like them and forget who I was, kind of thing. And what I'm learning through this focus and this non-self and stuff like that, and I know I don't know whether you can connect the dots or not, but I am seeing that in that example of Mother Teresa, knowing my mind works, and knowing what recognizing ego and conditioned thinking and stuff like that, it's like, and the experience of meditation, it is such joy and pleasure to meditate. I said this the other night, it's like I can finally let ego go when I meditate and just be, and it is the most comforting, good feeling that I can summon up, and all of that is teaching me, or giving me an awareness to stay with me, and it's not the I making me, but to stay kind of contained and not being out there spreading myself so thin and trying to grasp anything that I can from outside of me. It's within, and to me that's what salvation is all about. It's the wisdom within. I don't know whether any of that makes sense, but it's teaching me loyalty to myself, not the I, but to stay with myself. That's where I am.
Thank you. Developing fidelity towards oneself is kind of the essence of the Dhamma too, isn't it? And recognizing meditation as a true refuge is something that is another essential aspect of developing the Dhamma, rather than something that we take great meaning from, because it is a true refuge. You described it beautifully. In meditation, even if it's just for that brief moment when we're mindful of the breath, in that moment, the ego is left behind. It usually comes back in the next thought, but we come back to our breath, and we can develop a true refuge for ourselves in our meditation practice. Thank you. Lisa, good to see you this morning. How are you?
Nice to see you too, John. It's great to be here, and I learn so much from the things that you say and every single person here. I just think people say things and they're so meaningful and profound. And it's like, yes, that's not apply exactly to me, but they do. Everything relates.
Yeah.
So when I read this sutta, it almost came across as like a made-up story because of what happened.
Yeah. I mean the cow at the end.
Yeah, because, but also I kept thinking about what it was. Like, he went to the Buddha and was very insistent, and Buddha said, the Buddha's taking care of the most infirm and the most needy people, alms for the poor. And he said, well, that's what I'm doing. And he asked him a second time. And then I guess he asked him a third time, and I was, thinking, maybe the Buddha realized how, yes, it's so important to give alms to the poor, this is what I'm doing, but this person is needy right now. It's okay for me to help him, and that's what needs to be done, and not like, no matter what happens, I'm giving alms to the poor. And he asked him a third time. I mean, I don't know how that all was, but I go about my life and thinking something is important and something else comes along, and it's very hard to, as important, and it's okay not to do what I was doing, because that, in a way, is the ego. I'm doing this, and that's what I'm going to be doing. And presented with a new idea. You have to have an open mind. You have to be able to be receptive to a change.
Yep. That's very profound. It's an understanding of impermanence. And it's also, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but it's like the Buddha, the great, wonderful, Buddha, kind of going through a very basic thing that everybody goes through.
It's even more meaningful than you describe. I should have been more clear in my description of an alms round is when the Buddha is walking through town getting his food for the day. He's not serving the poor at that point. That's how they lived their life. They left wherever they were, the monks, the Buddha, everyone. They got up off their cushion, walked into the nearest town with a bowl, and got their sustenance for the day. So if you look at it that way, it was incredibly selfless to even put that aside. And he understood, here's a man that needs this teaching right now. And he gave it to him. It's a remarkable sutta in that way, and also in its directness too. So, thank you.
Maybe the Buddha recognized too that life is impermanent, and so who knows what will happen to him if I don't take care of him. And then, sure enough, it did happen.
Oh yeah.
Like I think about that all the time. If with my parents, and my wife, the same thing that like we may decide that there's something we want to do, but we'll put it off because apparently just thinking, who knows how long they're going to be around, and if I lose this opportunity, maybe I'll regret it.
Yeah. I mean, it just reinforces. First set the Buddha off on his search for understanding was seeing death for the first time in his life at 29 years old. And he realized that if life is so fleeting, what the hell's the point? And that's when he set out looking for meaning in his life. What is the meaning? Why are we so competitive and aggressive? Why we need to acquire all power and things if we all end up like that poor guy you saw on the side of the road? And it brings an immediacy to our life, but it also, and it doesn't mean we should live our lives with this morbid cloud over us, but it brings an immediacy with whoever we're with too.
Right.
Because we might not be here, they might not be. We just don't know.
And even if the petty, the petty feelings.
What's the point?
Yeah.
But even more than that, to me, what's more important is the of life, even though that's a pretty big one. It's the impermanence of all things. As Lao Tzu said, once you recognize the impermanence of all things, you'll stop attaching yourself to anything. You stop grasping whatever and then when you really boil that down, that attachment to things, what we most attach ourselves to are views. And usually those views are rooted in ignorance. They're wrong views. And yet we'll do anything. Ignorance is ignoring anything that would challenge that ignorance. We'll do anything to continue that ignorance. We create all types of strategies as to why it's reasonable to maintain ignorance. Of course, we don't look at it that way. We usually see it as a reasonable view. When the Buddha realized that upon his awakening, how do I get past that deluded thinking that's common to all human beings? How does delusion know delusion? You need a framework, and that's the Eightfold Path. So thank you for bringing that up. Eva, good to see you.
John, great to be here, and happy to be with everyone. Time to practice noble silence. Thank you.
Glad you're here. Thank you. Mary, good to see you this morning.
Good to be here. My meditation practice is going well. And, I realize that when I stick to it on a regular basis, I sleep better. So,
Yeah.
and the only problem I have, I have a lot of problems, but one of the ones that I encounter is when you encounter a noxious person, I'm not sure how to, sometimes I find myself to the point where I let them talk, but I can't listen.
And I don't know whether that's, I don't know where to put that in the scheme of things. It's, I suppose what I should do is know that this is ever, and that in reality it's going to pass, and the moment is going to pass, and not to worry about it agitating me. But it tends to lead to anxiety hearing things like that.
I try to see maybe where the other person is coming from, because I think a lot of the time we don't realize that this person's going through whatever,
Yeah.
and we don't know. And I think separates us a lot from one another is that we don't know what we've been through, so we expect, this is the way life is. Why can't you?
Oh, yeah.
You put yourself up by bootstraps, and sometimes they react in a way that might be difficult for us to understand.
Yeah, but when we start understanding our own confusion and deluded thinking, our own suffering, then we can more easily in others. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be situations where people are just obnoxious.
Yeah.
And so, the Eightfold Path is the perfect guidance for that. No matter how obnoxious someone is, we can maintain right speech and right action in response to them. But it also doesn't mean that we're there to solve the problem of obnoxious people, especially on an individual basis, or even on a global basis. Again, the Buddha didn't see his Dhamma as being salvific. If in the situation we realize that there's nothing we can do, meaning no matter what I say, this person's not going to want to hear what I have to say, we'd be mindfully present, and it's okay to extricate yourself from the situation. Leave that person in peace. Excuse me.
Know is that it is a point of view, and simply that's what it is.
Yeah, and that's all it is. And remember, where that point of view is probably rooted is in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And in the moment, it can't be any different than it is. And that's why if it seems like it's a situation where we can maybe shed some light on what's occurring to that person, fine. If not, it's often best. There's many, many incidences in the Sutta Pitaka where someone is talking to the Buddha and asking him a question or challenging him in some way, and the Buddha just sits in silence. Appropriate thing to do at that time. And then if it's a recurring situation that you find yourself in, it's okay to say, be in the situation anymore. Even that's true refuge too. Even the Buddha, he didn't push his luck. He lived secluded from the world and yet spent a great deal of time engaged in the world. This isn't something that we're supposed to prove how, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but it happens at times that we're supposed to prove how awakened we are by taking on all comers, putting ourselves in situations just to say, oh, look. That's not how it is. There's the description of dukkha. Being entangled in the world at times is going to be very unsatisfactory. It's okay to remove yourself from it. So, thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. It's important. Debbie.
I just wanted to add that. I think that does go in the Eightfold Path because it can be right action to remove yourself. It can
Yes,
be right action.
exactly.
It can also be helpful to that person because you're setting a boundary, and maybe they don't understand boundaries. So it's just, it's a learning experience for them too sometimes when we walk away or we end the conversation. Doing that in a kind and gentle way, We're teaching something too about boundaries and right action to take care of self so that we're not, burnt out and not in a good place either.
Yeah. That is an aspect of right action that so many levels to the Dhamma. You're not giving that person by reacting, you would be giving that person more validation just by engaging in the argument, or you should be this, or how can you think that way, or that's wrong. And most people are used to that pattern only continues. When you remove yourself gracefully, however you can do that, you're at least giving that person an opportunity to think about, wow, how come I didn't get into it with me? You give them pause to think about their own responses to life as life occurs. It's a great strategy to remain peaceful and to foment peace around you, is to just not engage with obnoxious or hurtful people. Eva.
And this also, I see, relates to what you just read of the Bahiya, or whatever it is, that, what is seen is just seen, what is heard is only heard, and what is cognized is only cognized. So you're taking I out of it, and so if you can take I out of the situation, then you behave.
Yeah, and just seeing hurtful or obnoxious people as they are. Everybody has a right to be that way too, But when there's no me here, then I don't need that person to be any different, because there's nothing there. There's no reference point for saying, because I'm not there. And the example of the Buddha's life, and I think we're all developing that, is when someone is in obvious need of something that we have to give and they're open to it, we'll naturally give it to them. Whether it's a kind word or an important teaching. It's an expression of compassion married with wisdom. We also know how to act. We know right action. Debbie, do you have, I interrupted you.
I want to say that, Lisa, what you said to me was really, really helpful to me.
Yeah.
That I'm taking away about, that when we're interrupted in something we're doing and taking the eye out of that situation, and, if somebody's asking us for something or interrupting us, and that was really poignant for me for some reason, because I think I do kind of respond with, I just want to finish this, and to be able to see that in a different perspective is really helpful for me today. And, I've been struggling this week with the eye stuff, like having people pull out in front of me and then go really slow down the road, and, just trying to just like crank it on. I've been really struggling. Usually I'm able to be compassionate,
but sometimes you just want to shoot them, don't you?
It continues to be obnoxious.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
It is.
So I've had my own struggles with that this week, and anything else I was going to say about that, but anyway, I guess it wasn't important. But this is all helpful. It's always a struggle that I'm making, that, there's that piece of me that gets hooked in, and so I'm starting, I know it's about my anniversary. On our anniversary, my spouse and I, we just had 28 years.
Wow, congratulations.
So we do this thing where we go to the river, where it was our first date when we anniversary, and we have this tradition where we always see the heron, the heron's there on our first, it's kind of my totem kind of animal. And so over the last 2 years, I realized that I was kind of hanging on to that, and that, like feeling blessed, and that's kind of I was getting some insight today that that's some I'm making too, that I have to have this totem to be blessed, for my relationship. And so kind of like trying to let go of that. And this year, it was like we were out during the day, the river was high, and I pretty much had let go of it, knowing that I wasn't probably going to see the heron meeting or anything, And it was like, I feel like it was in letting go that this thing happened, because then the heron came. We decided to go out and walk across the bridge later that evening, and the heron just came flying across the river, squawking at us, really loud, and then perched, and then on the way back, it was a silhouette of the heron. It was just such a magnificent experience. Wow. And I do feel blessed, but that's the struggle. Like, is like just as, well, if we're blessed and other people aren't, how's that work? And I get that, that's kind of the I'm making, and yet I felt positive in that I let it go, and it happened anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just like, how do you make sense of that? I don't know. In terms of, okay, I'm not blessed, but this beautiful thing happened anyway, and it's impermanent. Might happen next time, might not. That's how I'm trying to take
Wow. Thank you. What a wonderful story. I forgot your spouse's name.
Jess.
Jess. It was so nice to meet her at the picnic. Please tell her I said hello. The way that I would see that is just I was fortunate that the heron alighted in that moment. That's all. And it's wonderful. And it doesn't get into the kind of that's one of the things that I used to wonder about, years ago when I was taught that, well, if I did the right thing, and I always had that thought, well, what about these poor saps that don't even know this? How are they getting blessings, or praying that your team wins? Well, how does that work? The other guys, they don't deserve it. It was always very confusing to me that when that person pulls out in front of you and then does 15 miles an hour under the speed limit, and you have that thought, what a so-and-so. It's at that point that you begin to forgive yourself. Not, and I'm not saying to do this, but you might be, because I think we do it, especially when we're developing a Dhamma practice. We weigh ourselves, well, that wasn't right action or right speech. What's wrong with me? Rather than recognizing we're human beings. When the Buddha describes dukkha, he's talking also about the causes and conditions that are inherent in the world. There's going to be people like that do that, and we might react to it. The most appropriate thing to do once we've reacted is to recognize, I'm in a less than peaceful mind state. Let me be at peace with that instead of taking it any further. That last instruction that I gave, to be at peace with less than peaceful mind states, relates to the fourth foundation of mindfulness, but how we should always treat our minds. Our minds are agitated, maybe full of rage. Be at peace with that in this moment. Of course, it takes an understanding of the difference between acceptance and approval. But the only way to move through anything, great bliss, great happiness, great rage, great sadness, is to be as peaceful as we can with it. Meaning, in that sense, not judging it in any way, not judging ourselves. Most of the time, and there's another way to look at right in relation to the Eightfold Path, right or wrong, as appropriate or inappropriate, because that's not so prone to self-judgment. Meaning, in this moment, when that person cut me off, it was appropriate in the instant to be upset. What's inappropriate is then to judge yourself or to justify your upset by continuing to judge the other person in some way. It's just what occurred.
Or to try to cut the other person off again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about the incidences we hear about road rage. People end up killing each other over, but that happens all the time. Lisa.
And that's the 2 arrows. And Jay and I actually bring that up once in a while.
That's great.
Because it's so meaningful. It's exactly what we do. But actually, Debbie just said something, and then you kind of echoed it too, about this is what I don't understand about religion and blessings and things like that. People pray for something to happen or some good things to happen, and sometimes their prayers are answered. Your prayers have been answered, but then people or bad things happen, and they pray for good things to happen, and then the bad things happen. Their prayers weren't answered. Why is that?
How does that happen? So the answer is,
what does it mean to be blessed? I mean, the whole thing just, I can't even hold on to it in my head.
You can't. The answer,
I don't know what it means.
The answer that's often given why the prayer wasn't answered, why you didn't get the pot of gold, is that sometimes the answer is no. So that's pretty convenient, isn't it? And maybe that's true. I'm not saying that there's no, I don't have complete understanding of everything. So maybe there is a supreme being that somehow got the time to pull strings on individual people. But that's the implication, isn't it? That if I pray hard enough, it just doesn't make sense in any real way. And the Buddha also struggled with this. I mean, these were common beliefs during his time, that there's supreme beings that are somehow involved in our lives. And one of his great realizations was, so what? What's most important? This is when what the Buddha taught had great appeal to me, because what he's saying is we are in control of how we think and how we feel moment by moment. no matter what's occurring around, no matter if we get the pot of gold or bupkis. That's a good word. I haven't used it in a while. If we get nothing, so what? If there's no me in it, it doesn't matter, does it? Food is enough. I don't need a restaurant. That's the difference. And if this is enough, constantly seek for more, do I? I don't have to pray for things to be different than they are. I can be at peace with a less than peaceful mind state. I can be at peace in a less than peaceful world. The first noble truth says it ain't possible, meaning permanent, ongoing peace. It's just not part of having a human life. So why even pray for it?
Maybe that's, there's spirituality, then there's religion. And I think that there's some intersection there, but those, they're devout people and they find great solace in their religion and their religious beliefs. But I think those that have a lot of spirituality, which is accepting what happens, and not saying God didn't answer my prayers. That's not what they say. They say this is just life unfolding, and we accept it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The Buddha was the biggest radical of his time, and what he taught was radical acceptance. It really is that simple. Again, I have no problem with religion. I was brought up Roman Catholic. It didn't work for me, so I looked for other things. Maybe, and actually I would say maybe, I look at that in a way that I was fortunate because I'm happy that I looked for something else. I'm glad that I did, and I feel myself not blessed, but fortunate that I found something different. Thank you, Lisa. Lorna, good to see you.
Good to be here. There was one day this week, I had a particularly busy day, and I got to about 4 o'clock, and I was just like torn everywhere, no focus on anything. And I actually said to myself, no more arisings.
Huh?
And I realized what had happened was a lot of stimulus through the day, through my senses, etc., etc. And they just kind of built up, and I got to 4 o'clock, and I just like, enough, just no more. And I realized it's the arisings through your senses that are, send you that way. And then I thought, well, 5 clinging aggregates, and I'm interpreting it through my own self. Obviously, I'm not awakened, so I internalize everything and think about myself in the wrong way. And with all these arisings, what I kind of do is like I turn and try to integrate that arising into myself. Something else happens and I sort of turn into that. So I'm kind of like shifting throughout the day. Myself is kind of like shifting through to what is occurring.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting. It's just because it's.
And that shift is where the eye making is taking place. It is exhausting.
It's me.
Yeah.
Life, me trying to accommodate my life, but in the wrong way. Trying. And I thought it's all this sort of like shifting, trying to. And by the time I got to 4 o'clock, I was tired out, exasperated with life, and I realized it's all what you talk about. And then today's sutta speaks about what I should be doing. If I was an awakened person, I would hear something and not string a story to it. I would taste something and not string a story to it. Feel something and not string a story to it. It just is. And Obviously, I'm not awake. I can, I'm just a bunch of frightening aggregates with an ego. And this is how you try to cope with just the day when you are a bunch of frightening aggregates with an ego.
You
Just trying to jiggle yourself.
You first have to gain insight into the fact that you are fog clinging aggregate. So you're well on your way. I think you're going to beat the cow. So. And it's interesting that this theme of arising and passing away has been going on for a couple of weeks now. And you're recognizing the arising. The arising, it could be another word, or is another word, for clinging or joining with what's occurring. And it is exhausting because if you think about all you're doing is joining with what's occurring or experiencing the passing away, you're dragging all that stuff with you. So by 4 o'clock, it's exhausting to drag your day's experiences around with you. And we do that because at that point of contact, we want whatever's occurring to be different in some way, or we wouldn't be joining with it. Recognizing the passing away of all things, and that what I'm involved with now is impermanent. And then we allow for the arising, the joining with it, and the passing away, the separation from it. And we stay mindfully present with life as life occurs. Action of one of the things that, and I think you would say this is true, is as we develop our practice, it seems like we have simply more physical energy and mental energy. And the reason is we're not joining with so much stuff. We're not carrying all this stuff around with it. So we are naturally we have more energy.
You're also giving your mind a break from the mental chatter, which doesn't happen for a lot of people. But yeah, I was just thinking, it's an interesting point because a lot of this is that you just can't time life. So maybe the person that was going slow in front of Debbie prevented her from getting killed by someone going through a red light. Sure. Just like maybe the Buddha, contributed to, was it Bahiya's death by slowing him down and giving him that talk, and now the cow killed him.
Yeah.
You can't really time things.
You can't time
they
anything.
Happen as they happen when they happen. You just have to accept them.
Yep. And those are all part of worldly causes and conditions. The reason why I say that is some people will say, well, if you got trampled by the cow when you left here, it's because you got bad karma. That's got nothing to do with karma. But we are constantly exposed to worldly causes and conditions by having a human life, meaning floods and hurricanes and earthquakes and nuclear war. That's all part of it that we are not directly responsible for, but they're part of having a human life. People going too slow, people going too fast, all of it. It's all described in the first noble truth as dukkha. Diane.
When somebody cuts in front of me or I'm with a noxious person, my first reaction is I just want to kill him, or I want to
That's all?
Takes care of everything.
Everything. To lesser degrees in other stuff that I'm dealing with, and what I'm hearing this morning. When you talk and say some of the things, it sounds like instantaneously, if I am awake, if I'm awakened, I will the guy go, have compassion for him instantaneously. I will not feel like killing him. And to me, that's like awakening is. And I watch myself through the day, and when I experience some of these things, I'm getting a little better with people that drive, but it's people that I can't walk away from that I still want to kill, but I need to, be a little more compassionate with. My question is, it takes me time to feel the feelings. Like in Anthony's experience, I don't know how long he sat there or how long he experienced the feelings before but depending on the situation, sometimes I will feel feelings, and I'll be at least conscious of that I'm that I'm feeling feelings around this incident before it passes. I know it will pass, and I can say to myself, just stay with it, let it go, because where I have it in me, some teaching or something, that it's important to feel the feelings and not just ignore them or reject them or whatever, stuff them. Is that, is faster?
Or easier. So I don't entirely know what you mean by feeling the feeling. So if you mean by delving into the feeling or embracing the feeling or analyzing the feeling, I would say that's not according to the Buddhist teaching. And in this here for the first week of the Shamatha-Vipassana Sutta, but I say it often, the 4 foundations of mindfulness: being mindful of the breath in the body, be mindful that, I'm talking a little bit quicker because it's getting late. Be mindful that feelings are arising, be mindful that thoughts are arising, be mindful of the interaction of that process, and it results in the present quality of mind. In other words, if we're reacting to feelings that are arising, thoughts arising, we're going to continue to create a disturbed mind state. So in this sense, a feeling is any type of disturbance in the mind. Definition. It's most expedient to simply recognize that a feeling has arisen and come back to what's occurring. Because if we start judging the feeling or the thought that is attached to that feeling, which is an emotion, then we're stuck in a more distraction. We're stuck in more eye-making. Not sure what you mean by feeling the feeling. It's enough to just recognizing that a disturbance has arisen. And so that feeling could be great pleasure, great happiness. Recognizing the feeling itself is impermanent and come back to what's occurring. A feeling is never what's occurring. A feeling is our interpretation through a whole series of events of what's occurring.
Just quickly, I am finding right now what I'm experiencing is that I now see when I am the one that has been the person that cut somebody off, and when I have been the person that said the thing that should not have been said and have created this thing. And it's weird because why did I do that? It's like it has nothing to do with it more often than not really doesn't have to do with the other person. I didn't mean to cut that person off. I just was such in a hurry, or my mind was totally distracted somewhere else. And so in that way, our distraction can also be a hindrance or create difficulties, not only in how we handle them, but how we create them.
Yep. Thank you for pointing that out. It all comes from a self-referential view, doesn't it? I need to be in front of you.
Yes, I gotta be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the first, that's why that person is cutting me off too. It's the same reason why I cut people off. For the first 15 years of my driving career, my head and my hand was out the window in a gesture that I won't use.
It wasn't high.
It wasn't high. Nobody was safe on the road with me because I was so impatient, and I had to be someplace quicker than anybody else. It didn't matter. Awful. I loved driving when I first got my license. But one of the first things I did is I drove from Berkeley Heights out to here and drove up and down to Delaware. I loved it. I really hated it because I was so agitated all the time. And it really went. I did a lot of spiritual practice, but my head and my hand didn't come back into the car until I started developing a real meditation practice. I calmed down a little bit. Way to live. And other people are stuck in that. But it doesn't mean, and again, we have this great understanding of where suffering arises, and we still might get upset at other people, and it's okay. The Buddha taught the Eightfold Path as the middle way, and one of the ways that applies is it allows us to be human beings as we develop a mind of lasting equanimity. You had something else? We got to get. No, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I promise I'll close the class.
I understand what Diane was saying. You're saying that it's not good to resist your feelings. So
it's not good.
I agree with that because I think you have to experience it. Not
Oh.
dwell on it, but just let it be, because if you
Yeah.
push it away, it gets stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why the Shamatha-Vipassana Sutta is so beautiful. It doesn't tell us to bury our feelings in any way. But what it teaches us is to recognize that as human beings, we are going to have feelings. And then it says what to do with them. Be dispassionate about it and be mindful of the impermanent nature of all feelings and thoughts, which is really the most effective way, rather than getting into an analytical thing. Thank you for bringing it up. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I don't like what Eva said because that's where I am is when I'm cutting at people off. When I'm the noxious person, I don't like that. The ego has me believing that I am the sweetest, most loving, kindest person in the whole world, and whammo, I'm not. And I think,
you don't want to hear that.
back to the drawing board. But that does help develop compassion.
Yeah. We don't have to be anything. We don't even have to be awakened. But if we want to be at peace with ourselves, we'll let go of self-referential views.
Remember that.
Remember that. So let's finish with metta. There was an announcement I have, but I can't think of it. So we'll finish with metta as we always do. So find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. And let that mindfulness of your breath cease any distracting thoughts to the past or that may have arisen from our talk today. And metta means goodwill or loving kindness. An aspiration for those of us developing the Eightfold Path and an ongoing expression of an awakened, fully mature human being. Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, seated, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. The mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. No will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. To be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.